Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw killer thumbnails for your YouTube videos, and we're going to be doing it in Inkscape today. Let's get started. Welcome back. This is Fuzzee Tutorials, and I'm Fuzzee D. So here's some examples of different thumbnails that I've done pretty recently. And I don't actually normally use Inkscape for my thumbnails. I use another program on my MacBook, but I can do these same thumbnails on Inkscape. And the program I use on my Mac is getting fairly old, and it's a paid program where Inkscape is a lot more popular. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and it's completely free. So I thought that would be a good one to show you how to do this stuff in. So you can see there are some different styles of thumbnails here, but they all have some things in common that make them pretty killer designs. So they all have really large text and not too much text. We're using high contrast. In some of them we're using a personal picture, so that helps you connect with your audience. So if you're doing, talking head videos, then this is probably a pretty good way to go. If not, then something more like this one here, the hunting Christmas trees ones, or even something more like this. This is a little more of a slicker professional look. We've got some radial gradient background here. Now this is a little more text than is sometimes good, but it's not too much, and we've got a little bit of contrast between the letterings so that it kind of differentiates one section from another. Same thing with this one here. So I know a mistake a lot of people make, myself included. I was really bad for putting way too much text on here. And really what you're wanting to do with your thumbnails is just intrigue them enough that they're going to want to take a closer look. And giving them a little further description of what's in the video is actually the job of your title. And your title and other elements that you put in your description and your tags and stuff like that is what's going to get it suggested for somebody to see in the first place. But your thumbnail is kind of the hook to get them to take a closer look. That's pretty important. I know since I've changed to this newer design with the larger, bolder text, my click-through rate is higher. Thumbnails that I also do for clients have been working pretty well too now that I've switched to this new style. First of all, we'll take a quick look and I'll show you where to get the program. So I have their web page loaded up in my browser. So the place you're looking for is inkscape.org, and then you would click on their download link and current version, and then you would just pick which one you're wanting to download. Most of you, it's probably going to be Windows. And once you have it downloaded and installed, which I'm making the assumption you know how to do, then we're going to fire up the program. Okay, so when you first start up this program, this separate panel isn't going to appear. This is something that I did after the fact. Normally when you open a panel, it'll show up on the right here, and this gets smaller. But you can actually take those panels and drag them right out of the main interface and have them be something separate like this. That's kind of outside the scope of what I'm wanting to teach today, so I'm not going to get into that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the size of our document here. So we're going to go into our document properties, and I'm going to change our units to pixels. And our display unit to pixels. And then we're going to change our size to 1920. Got 1080, which is the aspect ratio that YouTube wants you to use for thumbnails, so 16:9. Now you could go 1280 by 720, but most people are used to the 1920 by 1080. And something that I usually like to do is I like to drag out some guidelines to work with. That way, if I've got a picture that overlaps the edge of our work area, you can see where it's going to actually export proper size of. So now most of the time when you're doing thumbnails, you can probably get away without using these, but it also helps you to align stuff a little easier. So it's something that I like to work with, but it's totally up to you if you want to use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box, and then I'm going to go over to my fill and stroke style actually, and then we're going to pick something. You'll have to bear with me. Like I said, I don't use this program a lot, so I'm going to be stumbling through some of this in spots, but basically we want our outline to be inside and on top of our little square. Unlike the other program I normally use, I don't have the option of having the outline be completely inside the area of the shape that I'm working with, but that's okay. We can work with this. We've got our guidelines up, so we know pretty much where it's going to show up. And in this particular case, I don't really want a thick outline anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this outline to something that's a little higher contrast, or a little brighter, should I say. So let's go with making this yellow. So we're going to hold our shift key down and click on the yellow box down here to change our outline, and then we'll change our inside by clicking on another color. Now I know that's awfully bright, but that's not the final color we're going with. I don't usually like to use a solid color for the background. I usually like to use something that's got a little bit more interest to it. Another thing you could do is bring in like an abstract photo and then put a Gaussian blur over top of it to kind of smudge it a little bit, so you don't have any sharp edges that will distract the viewer from the text and whatnot that's on top. So the next thing we're going to do is click on our gradient tool. If I go back to my fill tab here, I can go through the different types of gradients. So, our first choice is a linear gradient. Okay, so we're going to take this one end here. So you see this little tiny square. I'll zoom in on this so you can see it better. So we're going to click in here, and then we can change the color for that end of our gradient. So let's make this a little bit darker, and then we'll do the same thing on this end. We'll click in this little tiny square, and we'll go over here and click on this nice orange color. And then if we want to change the angle of the gradient, we can just grab this little box on this end and we can bring it up to this corner. And we can bring this one down here. Until you get just the angle of gradient that you want. Okay, so we've got some other options here. Now we've got our radial gradient, but we'll come back to that in a minute. And here we've got our mesh gradient. which is kind of cool. So we can go up to this corner here, and we can pick, say, our orange color again, and we can go down to this corner, pick another color. So now we've got basically a 4-way gradient. But they've added a kind of a neat twist here, is you can take these little ones on the side and you can warp your actual gradient fill like so, which is kind of interesting, but we'll get rid of that. So that's something that might come in useful if you're wanting to do 2 or 3 layers of your background, so you could get some really interesting effects. But that's a little bit beyond what I'm wanting to teach you today. So now we'll go back to our radial gradient. So here we can go pick one of our ends here and we'll change the color. So we'll make that our dark red. And it doesn't matter whether you choose this one or whether you choose this one. It's not like you can do 3 different colors for this gradient. And then your central color, we can change that. So if we want to make that a little brighter orange, we can come up here and move our slider a bit. Make that a little brighter. And then we can take the center point of our radial gradient and we can move it around. Now I'm going to hold my control key down and move my scroll wheel so that I can zoom out a bit. And then I can take this here and I can extend it up. We can even turn this a little bit. So this makes our center area spread out more. You can do the same here. So this way you can change the shape. So you can have like an elliptical gradient. But what we want for this is a little more like so. And let's actually make this a little smaller. Don't know if you can hear that from outside, but if you can, sorry about the noise. We have a lot of snow on the ground and they're still trying to get it cleaned up. Zoom back in here. And to do that, I just hit 5 on the keyboard with no other modifier keys. Okay, so now if I wanted to take a picture, so I'm just going to grab one from off screen here, and we can drag it in. Okay, let's zoom out on that a bit. Okay, so I'm going to shrink this down. I'm going to hold my control key down just to force the aspect ratio. There is a checkbox you can click to force it to keep it in ratio, but I always have trouble finding it, so I just find it easier to hold the control key down. Okay, so we want to expand this out to the size that we want. Okay, and now we're just gonna nudge it over with shift left. All right, so now we're gonna take our Bezier tool and we're going to trace our drawing here. So I'm not really used to their Bezier tool, so I might make a few mistakes here. Please bear with me. want to drag that out a bit, get a bit of a curve, so drag it out the handle. And I can let go and then go my next point. So we'll go up to here. And now I won't make you suffer through watching me do this painfully slow. I'll speed this up until we come to the end of it. All right, so we're done getting it all done and fine-tuned and everything. So now I'm going to create a copy of it. Okay, so I'm used to doing this a little different way. So I had to actually change the outline so that it encloses what we want to keep, not what we want to throw away. So now that I've got this new shape, I need to make a copy of it. And we'll just take that copy and drag it over here because we're going to need it again. Okay, 5 on the keyboard again. So now we select this one and we select our picture. And we go up to Object and Clip. And then click on Set Inverse. And there we go. Okay, so now I need to bring back that copy that we made. So we're just going to zoom out a bit here. And we're going to drag this back over top. Zoom back in. Okay, so now I'm going to have to make some adjustments to the shape because I also discovered I can't take a shape and apply an outline to it. I have to actually use this shape we created and put a stroke on that. This is one of the reasons I prefer my other program. But it's just a matter of getting used to the way they do things in this one. So I'll make some adjustments and then we'll come back when I'm done that. Okay, I believe we have what we want there. So now we're going to go down here and we're going to pick our outline color. So we're going to want something with some contrast. So maybe we'll go with bright red here. We're going to hold our Shift key down. And create our stroke. And we'll go up to our stroke style. And we're going to give it a number here. So let's try 12. Okay, that might be a little much, so let's take that back down to, let's try 8. Okay, I think that'll work. And now, to be honest, I normally do like an outer glow on this as well. out beyond the line, but I just can't figure out how to do it in this program, so I can't show you that today. So we're going to select both of these, and we'll make sure it says we've got two objects selected, and then we're going to group it. So I'm going to go to Object and Group, and then we're going to bring this one on top, and now we'll move it to where we want it. And now we can enlarge it a little bit. Okay. Now we'll just recenter it with the 5 key. So now we're going to take our text tool, and then we're going to draw a box for our text. Okay, so now we can select our text. First, we want to set a solid color. An outline, we do want to have a stroke on this, but we also want a solid color in the middle. So we're probably going to make our solid color, well, we can go one of two ways. We can either have it be dark with that light outline, and then we can go up here and we can push our outline or stroke to the back. Okay, and we can change our vertical spacing here if we want to. Actually, I think I will leave it a little wider spaced, and then we're going to make our text bigger. Now you can either do it this way by changing the actual size, but I find it easier just to use the select tool and then place it here. Hold my control key down, and then we can resize it and then get our final placement. And we probably want to use a different color than what we outlined the photo with. So let's make this a yellow outline. Now we do have some choices if you want to get a little fancier with the text. So if we go back to our fill, we can actually create a gradient fill. So we can change our angle here. And right now it's going from solid to a transparent color, but we're just going to make it another solid color. So let's pick our orange color for that side. And now if we want a more gradual visible change between the lettering, just drag these out a bit. Let's zoom out a bit. Okay. Now we're not getting exactly the effect that I'm after here. Let's try making this more of a diagonal. Okay. And maybe we can change our top color to a little brighter of a red. And we can actually do the same thing with the stroke as well. If you wanted to make this a gradient stroke, you can do that too. So we can go back to our stroke paint, and you have all the same options. So you got linear gradient and radial and mesh, and we could even do a pattern. So I've never used their patterns in here, and I've looked at them, but they work completely different than the way I do patterns in my other program. So I can't get into it with you for this tutorial, but so there's the basics on how we lay this out. Now we could add some more stuff to this. Quite often I'll add an icon that represents the program we're working with. So I'll just go off screen and grab something here real quick. So let's say, for instance, I'm doing something for Microsoft Windows. So I could grab an SVG, and we can bring it up over here. Now I can take the main photo and we can shift it off to the side a bit. And we could resize it just so it's not taking up quite so much room. It's really kind of down to personal taste. And we can take this and we can drop it down a layer. And then if we wanted to add a little drop shadow behind that, because it's an SVG, then it'll properly shadow it. That's why I went and drew my own versions of these logos so that I had them in SVG format. And we can go to filters, shadows and glows, drop shadow. Let's just pop this right over top here so you can see it too. And then we'll click on live preview. And that's probably a little bit thick. So make this 10. What happened there? 10. 12. And we'll drop our blur radius down a bit. All right, then we can apply and close. And let's move that away from the edge a little bit. Okay. And if you're wondering how I made it jump so far with one mouse click, I just held the shift key down, which creates a super nudge. And now we could do the same with the text. Since we're not doing a glow, we could do a drop shadow instead. It's kind of a little more 90s, but that's okay. Live preview. Probably make this a little smaller. So let's try making that 6 and 8. Sharpen that radius a little bit. I can live with that. Could do the same for the photo if we wanted to, but I don't think I will bother with that. This tutorial is starting to get a little long, so now there's a lot finer design work that we could do with this, but I just wanted to get you through the basics to where you can start building this stuff on your own. Hi, future Fuzzee D here. So I realized after I finished recording everything for the tutorial, I forgot to show you how to actually export this from Inkscape to a usable video for YouTube. So, a quick word about what format you should export it to. Now, YouTube will let you do it in either PNG or JPEG. It might even accept some other formats. But what we've discovered is that if you're going to post your videos on Facebook, if you don't make it a JPEG, then Facebook will actually strip out the thumbnail and only post the link. So make sure that you export it as a JPEG. So to export it, so we're going to go up to File and Export PNG Image. Now I know I just said JPEG, but once we're into this, we'll have the option to change it to JPEG. So that was Inkscape's preferred method. And they actually, on older versions, they didn't have an option to do JPEG, but as of the last release, then they added it. So we're going to go over here and make sure we click on Page. And you'll notice the width here is 1280 by 720. That's because I just opened up an older thumbnail I did for one of my clients. All of my newer stuff I do at the full 1080p. And then we're going to go Export As. And then now's when we can change it. We'll pop this little option down here, change it to JPEG. And then you would click on Save. And because it already exists, it's going to ask me if I want to replace. Normally it won't ask you this. And let me bring this back over here so where you can see it. So when you first do this, you're going to have this screen right here. And they're really trying to get you to use PNG instead of JPEG. So they give you this erroneous low quality warning, but just ignore that. And click on Options. And then what I do is I set my quality to 97%. And that's a really nice compromise between small file size and high quality picture. So I find that at 97, it's virtually indistinguishable from a PNG. Your main difference would be it doesn't, of course, allow any transparencies, but for thumbnails, that's perfectly fine. And we can turn on progressive quality. That should be defaulted to on already. And then we would just click OK. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Back to you, current timeline Fuzzee D. If you found this valuable, please help us out and hit that subscribe button. Thumbs up for us. It helps the YouTube algorithm. Make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Bye for now.